The Marinade.
There's no O in Marinade. Let's try it one more time. Ready? 1, 2, 3.
The Marinade.
Marinade.
Bone marinade. The
That's
Marinade.
The Marinade. With Jason Earle.
Sitting on the floor, waiting for someone to tell me to go. Just trying to keep my mind off the things that I know I can't control. But it's a hell of a thing, staring at everything you've ever owned. Sealed up in boxes in the hallway with no light and nowhere to go. I wanna drink my pain away for the first time in 2 months today. Yeah, I wanna drink my pain.
Welcome to The Marinade with Jason Earle, a free-flowing conversation about the creative process with creative people. This is episode 88, and our guest is Andrew Bryant. Andrew Bryant is a singer, songwriter, and multi-instrumentalist whose music has been a steady companion over the last few years. Bryant's music first entered my consciousness through his band Waterliars with Justin Peter Kinkel Schuster. The band has released 4 full-length records. Their most recent album, Roll On, was released in 2020, the same year that Bryant released his solo record, Sentimental Noises. Both albums were among my favorites of that most auspicious year. I'm a huge fan of Andrew Bryant's body of work, and his most recent record, A Meaningful Connection, which just came out, is my favorite thing he has made. Y'all, this was so much fun, and I'm so grateful for this opportunity. It is an honor to bring you my conversation with Andrew Bryant.
For the first time in 2 months today, I wanna drink my pain away. If I can't find another song to sing, I took a walk and stood outside. Watch the birds and the cars pass by.
Oh, that's clear. Can you hear me?
Does that sound okay?
Yeah, that sounds good.
I'm just using the built-in mic, so I won't even be.
Oh, it's fine. Yeah, yeah.
Just trying to be too fancy, I guess.
No, I don't blame you. I teach kids online, and so I had my mic and everything, and the other day I didn't have it hooked up, and I didn't realize I didn't have it hooked up, and then I was like, do I sound any different, y'all? And they're like, no, you sound fine, man.
Well, recently she was doing a big interview with like NPR for her work and for a podcast, and I was like, oh, we need to make it sound good. Like, I can totally do this. Yeah. And I had it set up with Zoom this exact way, and it worked perfectly. So I don't know what's going on.
It's funny, man. I mean, I've done so many of these lately, and so many musicians I feel like there's a tendency to maybe overthink it sometimes. Like it works. So
I didn't even give myself a lot of time because I was like, man, all I gotta do is plug this in and like click the link. It always works. So
right.
No, I'm not very tech savvy when it comes to like computers, honestly.
That's interesting.
I can work my Pro Tools and shit, but my wife is always having to like jump in. Like,
that's funny.
He's taught me so many things, like double clicks and swipes and shit that I didn't even know. I was like, how the fuck do you do this? Like, I don't even know.
That's funny, man. It's interesting. How does that affect everything's so digital now. Like, how does that affect when you're producing something?
Well, it was funny because when I'm working on this record, I had done vocals for this song like a couple times just on my own, and I always just like do everything myself. And I needed to kind of like stand up and be in the zone and be able to like punch in and like hit these vocals really hard because I couldn't get a good vocal take on this song, been driving me nuts. And so I was like, can you just come up and try to click around for me, like punch me in and punch me out. I'll teach you how to do it real quick. Dude, she figured that out in like 5 minutes, how to do that. And then she was just like punching me in and out. And then she started doing, I was like, how did you do that? So I learned like a few shortcuts on my Ableton system that I didn't even know existed, like I feel like I didn't even know that. Like once I meet people who are tech savvy, I'm like, holy shit. This is why it takes me so many man hours to get things done, just because like, I don't know. And I'm not a big manual reader. Like I'm not the type of dude who's going to like read the manual. I'm just like, I'll figure it out as I go, So.
Well, there may be something to that, just to help the process too. Just the fact that you're going to end up making mistakes if you don't really know that technical part of it. And you're going to have to kind of fight with whatever you're creating a little bit. There may be something really good to the fact, like to your ignorance.
I think that's definitely kind of part of the way that I've always liked to make records, was kind of just like not really understanding what it was going to sound like. And I just kind of started doing it and figuring it out. Now I've made so many records, I know how to get sounds that I like. Mm-hmm. But when it comes to like what software, what DAW I'm going to use to record with or anything like that, I changed last year too. Like I really heavily updated my system. I've been using a really outdated computer and software for a long time because I knew it really well. Mm. But I still was just like slow on it, It's just like, I think I do. I like that tension of like, and it slows me down. It makes me like, not just like, oh, I can do this really fast, Mm-hmm. I think if I keep myself like slow and kind of like struggling with the mechanics of it, then it like keeps the pace right for me. That makes sense. Because it gets in my head, it makes me think, and it gives me time to like work out sounds instead of just getting bogged down on like doing tricks or whatever.
Yeah. Oh, I like that a lot. So let's talk about that in the context of the new record, which is just so wonderful, dude. It is just, I've been a fan of your music for a while. I love Water Liars. Sentimental Noises is like go-to for me. It's on heavy rotation at our house. I absolutely love it. But this is my favorite thing you've done. And not only that, it is my favorite thing you've done by a little bit. And that's like a big thing to say because I love your work so much. And so I'm interested in what that process looked like in making this, because there's so much going on. COVID hits, you get sober, all these things happen at the same time. And just, if you could just kind of walk through like what that process looked like and how this thing came together a little bit.
Man, it's really great to hear you say that about this record, and thanks for being a fan and listening first and foremost. Always good to hear. Man, this record I didn't really plan on, because of Sentimental Noises just came out, a year ago almost. Yeah. Exactly. I wasn't really planning to put out another record this soon. At all. It usually takes me a couple of years to write enough songs and kind of weed out the ones that I don't like and find the ones that I do, and kind of come around to the theme that I'm wanting to work off of, and then get around to tracking it, and then get around to mixing it, and just like, it takes a while. But with this one, I had like 3 songs at the end of 2019 that I was pretty sure were going to be on this record, which were like Birmingham, Take the Time, and I think the first track, Private Window, I had written. And I was really going to go into this record and spend a lot of time on it. And really kind of work on this idea of time, past, present, and future. And I wanted to use kind of explore technology a lot. And it kind of put these like timeless stamps on songs mixed with things that are very time sensitive, like Twitter and don't at me and all these things that are like very present kind of moment little things that people say. So I wanted to make a record that really juxtaposed that. And then because of what happened, I kind of wrote the next 8 songs, you know, and just like out of nowhere. And I basically, you know, I was just like, I'm about to make this whole record of brand new songs that I've never played out, can barely even play all the way through, honestly, you know, and just start piecing this thing together. And that's what I did. I just buckled down and started piecing it together for it took me probably about 9 months.
Wow. How you start writing it before you stop drinking, and then and then you stop drinking. How much did that impact the process?
A good, yeah. But not in the ways that you would think so. I think I've always been, you know, one of these things you kind of deal with when you're kind of in and out of quitting drinking or going to therapy or getting any kind of help if you're an artist is like every time you take a big life change, you mess up the process, right? You know, it's like you're so used to the process of the thing that like makes you do it, and that makes you so reluctant to get rid of this big thing in your life. And so I don't know. I think I was to the point in my life where I was like, I know that's bullshit. You know, like I know that I'm more productive. The less I drink, the more productive I am. Period. I knew that I got to that point in my life. So I think that it actually affected it in overall a positive way because it allowed me to write a lot. It allowed me to rewrite songs. It allowed me to edit a lot. It allowed me to record different versions of the songs. And then also, I would say the bigger part that it really brought in was it like kind of made me realize where I was at. And that's what I wanted to write about. Because I was kind of so obsessed with writing about time that I realized like present now is the time. Like, what are you going through right now? You know, I think I was trying to like not write about myself too much, and what I ended up doing was really writing about myself. You know, it's like that's what I needed to do. So it helped me in that way also.
That's really interesting. Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, the thing I've been thinking about a lot of this stuff lately, and I think maybe listening to this record has helped me kind of work through some things too. And there are a couple of things that I want to talk to you about, and one of them is growing up in the church, and because it's like ever present, right? When you grow up in the church, and I read a wonderful interview. I just came across this. It was with you. Since I Left You, this blog. What a great job that guy did on that interview. Yeah. But you said something in there. You said, I'm an atheist on a really bad day and a little bit of an agnostic on a really good day. And I was like, oh, Jesus Christ, I can relate to that, you know? But I think we're close to the same age, and as I get older, like turning 40 it didn't really faze me. Actually, it just sort of was like, I turned 40 in December, and I was kind of like, cool, I'm pretty good with myself right now. I'm pretty happy with myself. But as I get like on the other side of 40, now all of a sudden, a lot of stuff is coming up. It's really interesting to me. Like even coming up to 40, I wasn't bothered by it, but I am so bothered by mortality because of growing up in the church, and I'm so consumed by it. I've noticed that on the other side of 40, I'm thinking about it all so much more even than I did. And, you know, I thank God for therapy. Like that helps me work through it. But going like the more distance I get, the more it becomes consuming to me, like unpacking the trauma of growing up in the church, for me at least. Right. And I wonder, you know, if you can relate to that at all, and, you know, how you wrestle with it.
Absolutely, man. Turning 40 didn't mess with me all that much either, which I did last year, actually. You know, that was like another thing that happened to me last year.
Right.
I feel like my kind of midlife crisis might have started about like 33 or something like that. it's weird. I have this, like, when I turned 33, it was weird. Like, I thought, like, this is the year that Christ died. This is the first thing that popped into my head.
Oh my
You know?
God.
I was like,
Fuck that.
and then I was like, well, what have I done with my life to the 33, you know? And then I made it through 33, and I was like, you're fine, you know, you're kicking good. And that was right at the, like, point when Waterliars was really taking off. It was about 2015. And then through my 30s, rest of my 30s was just, it really was kind of a whirlwind up and down. But it's one of those things where what you're talking about, I relate to a lot, because I think it's maybe healthy to really get here at this point in your life, because it means you're kind of slowing down and taking a real good stock. You know what I mean? I think it's real easy to ignore this stuff. And that's one thing that I think is maybe a little too heavy about my music sometimes, and, like, makes it hard for me to sell records, because, like, who wants to listen to this 40-year-old dude go through his midlife crisis and talk about his mortality? You know, like, we've seen that movie before,
and that's why I like it so much.
You know what I mean?
That's why I connect with it so much.
I like it too, and I know there's a lot of dudes and all kinds of people out there that go through this stuff. And I think the thing you're referencing in the interview was where I think he did do a good job. He kind of prodded me on that a little bit, and I wasn't completely ready to talk about it on that level, but it was good that he did, because it's one of those things where, I don't know, I felt like last year I was trying to get back in touch with spirituality in some way, and then I didn't know why. I was like, why? Like, why am I doing this? And I never really got the answer to why, and I'm still just sort of in the same place, you know. And so it's more kind of morphed into me just, like, being okay with, like, who I am and not knowing and having all the answers. But there's also this level of the way that we were brought up in which that is not okay. It's not okay to say you don't know. It's not okay to question things. It's not okay to say you don't have the answer. And so that is always eating at you a little bit. And, you know, it's kind of like your mom catching you do something you shouldn't do every day. You know what I'm saying? It's like that little bit of, like, shame you get as a kid. I think that just is something that it starts out really young, and it just is hanging around in there. That's the way I look at it anyways.
Well, and that shame that's the thing though, is that it builds. So
Right.
It's a little bit of shame almost all the time. I'll never forget laying there as a really young kid freaking out about the concept of eternity.
Yeah.
You know, because if you grow up in the Baptist church, you're taught, well, if you do this one thing and believe this one way, you're going to live forever in paradise. And if you believe this other way, you're going to burn in hell forever. And the very concept, I mean, even like when we started to get into science, like really get into space and stuff in school, I was like, I can't handle this shit. I can't do this science stuff. Give me a book. I can do books. I can't do this science shit. Because this whole concept of, like, there not being an end is, like, so, and the tension between there not being an end, but also that there being a clear finite end to my life on earth is just something that was always such a challenge for me. And that I think, you know, I'm learning through therapy that, like, that shit builds, you know, you have those little micro moments of shame that build and then lead to a deeper feeling of guilt later that has to be dealt with. I think that has to be, maybe you don't have to answer the questions by any means, but not dealing with that guilt is really unhealthy.
You're right, man. Absolutely. And what's interesting is when I got kids now, I got two 13-year-olds and 7-year-old. This is a great time to tell the story. This morning, I was taking my 7-year-old is doing summer school. And we always check out the church signs on the way from here to there. Particularly these two churches always have, like, these really great, you know how they do the marquee, you know, it's all a little weird.
Yeah.
There's this really great one down in Water Valley, Mississippi. Today, it was so good. It said, when Gabriel comes a tootin', we're going to be scootin'. What about you? And it's like, so when you're talking about like things that have been done to us by our parents and our churches and all that, but it's just think about driving around and being a kid and reading stuff like that. You know, that's something that I notice now as a father. It's just like all these messages that are constantly coming at you as a young kid that are making you think about like, well, what are you doing with your life and where are you going to go when you die? And you're like 7. You're like, I don't know, I'm going to summer school. You know, like what do I have to think? Where am I going to? The one close, the church next to the school says, eternity, smoking or non-smoking. Like right now, that's what is on the church marquee. You know, I drive by these like every day, and we talk about it. I talk to my kids about it and I try to kind of make fun of it and also like explain to them like, well, this is what these people believe, but it's a little bit ridiculous, you know, and it's a little bit ridiculous, but it's also kind of funny, you know. Like I try to make light of it that way it doesn't freak them out, and then they kind of know that it's normal for people to think this. There are people out there who think this way. It's normal for people like me to not think that way and not believe that way, and for them to, you know like that both sides exist and it's okay, and they don't have to freak out about it. My son also said this morning, I don't know, I asked him something, I was like, well, what are you going to do when you go to heaven? Why don't you ask God this for me? Because I'm not going to be there. I'm going to be in the bad place. I was like, because these people don't think I'm going to heaven. And he was like, oh. He was like, where's the bad place? And I was like, the other place is not heaven. He said, where's that? Chicken Town? I was like, what is Chicken Town? He's like, he made this. I was like, this is great. I'm going to start calling hell Chicken Town now.
That's so great. He's going up that way. I wanted to ask you that, like how you navigate, especially because I don't know why the first time I thought of what I'm about to say was like 6 months ago. I don't know why. I'm sure that most people think about this shit before then, but for whatever reason, it hit me like 6 months ago, and I went, maybe we shouldn't let kids go to church at all, like until you get to a certain point, you know. And I try to be careful when I say that because I have friends who go to church and they take their kids and their kids are doing great. And, I want to respect people's decisions when it comes to that stuff. But I do have this question in my head about like what my relationship would be like with other people, with my anxiety, with my mortality, if I had not grown up in the church and you mentioned 7. I mean, I remember being saved at 7, like the idea that you are allowed to make a decision about your eternity as a 7-year-old is just so fucking wild looking back on it. And so I was kind of curious. That's so great. Chicken Town, like that he's at 7, he's not bothered by that right now, you know. And I remember laying in bed being like, oh no, I need to make sure I'm saved so I don't burn in hell forever.
Yeah, me too. At his age, I definitely knew what hell was. You know, he calls Chicken Town, which I don't even know where or what that is, but he loves chicken, so I don't know.
Sounds better than heaven.
Me too. I was like, we're definitely going to Chicken Town, bro. I don't know.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, you're right though, man. It's one of those things where I feel the same way. Like I've definitely had those thoughts about like kids going to church, and I've had this thing like with raising my kids. You know, like a lot of my family, it's like you need to be carrying them to church. You know, so that's sort of their main goal. Is like you got to raise your kids in church, and like even that's one of those things where like you're not allowed to just be like, why, you know, like what I mean. And I wouldn't even have a big problem with it. I think the problem is that like, if your church is teaching them the right thing, I would never have a problem with them going to church. You know,
right.
If it was orchestrated different, if the whole thing worked differently in like a better way that was positive. That wasn't. But if you're not going to listen to me or other people who have the problem with the church has done to people for the last however long, then then we can't even have that conversation. I think that's where the divide is. Yeah,
totally
I agree. Defensive about it because I was raised in it and I've left it, and I know that I'm like finally to the point in my life where like I know I'm not going to Chicken Town. You know.
Yes. I think the churches, and we don't have to spend too much more time on this, and Sorry to my Christian friends out there who are listening right now, but like,
Same here. I got a lot of good friends.
yeah, and
But they need to be able to listen to me talk shit about it.
yeah, for sure.
We can be friends, It's like to me.
No.
That's where I'm at with it.
No, that's a great attitude.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's a great. I think that's a great point, man. Because I think like the church, the thing. I can only speak on my specific experience with it, right? And I mean, it's where I learned hate. It's where I learned bigotry. That's where I learned those things. I was seeing it around me too, growing up in the South and different small towns, but most of where I learned that stuff, where I saw hatred and where I saw bigotry, that was all coming from the church. That was all Sunday school taught directly to me, right? You should not like this person. You should judge this person because they are from this place or they believe this thing or their skin is this color. Literally, their skin is this color, like in Sunday school, Fucking wild, man.
The most segregated hour in America is Sunday morning, 11 a.m. That's what they say, man.
Yeah.
I mean, that tells you all you need to know. Like, if anyone ever just argue with me, I want to be like, our church is not racist. I want to be like, look around, bro. Like,
yeah.
Numbers don't lie.
Well, I mean, and like the number of churches that teach like the curse of Ham and all that kind of shit. I mean, and I don't think a lot of folks know that, that like that's pretty common in Baptist churches that you're taught that Black people are cursed by God. Like that's
I definitely learned that. Yes.
Yeah. And that really fucks with your head, like that's a lot.
If you're out just playing basketball with your buddies who are Black and you're like, well, I don't know, Ham seems cool to me.
Yeah, exactly.
Ham in Chicken Town, let's do it. I'll reach you,
Chicken Town's full of these guys. That sounds great.
That's just where they're losing, It's like, oh, I'm gonna make Black people are not cool. I grew up fucking Michael Jordan. Like, don't be like Michael Jordan. Be like, dude that works at the food store. I'm like, no. Yeah. I want Michael Jordan.
Yeah. That's great. So true, man. So true. I just wanted to be Barry Larkin, or Barry Sanders, or or Jordan, Jamal Mashburn, like all those folks. I had all those heroes. All my heroes were Black, I guess.
Yeah, mine too. Man. This is the same when I was young. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so let's kind of shelve that and kind of if it comes back up, it comes back up. I wouldn't be surprised if it does. But I'm curious about on the new record. You do pretty much everything, right? I mean, there's some pedal steel work and some organ you don't do, and everything else is you, right? I mean, you're writing, you're performing, you're producing. Can you talk a little bit about like how you approach that creative process versus how you would approach the process of songwriting and collaborating when you were with Water Liars or anytime that you're working with other folks, like what the difference between those looks like for you, and if you approach it from a different angle or if it's all kind of the same and then it just sort of makes its way out however it makes its way out.
Yeah. Well, for me, I write all my songs on the guitar. Almost 99% of my songs I write on the guitar. And I think that's a big part of the way me as a songwriter. I think if I write this song on the guitar and I strum it a certain way, this is the way that the song sounds to me, the songwriter in my head, and the way that I sing it. And then I just try to take that and translate it into a band setting. And now I know there's a big part of that because I'm a drummer, because I can play bass, because I can play piano. I can either hear it already or shelve it and know that I'll think about it later. You know what I mean? So it's like, for me, it is always about serving the song and what the original songwriter's vision was or is for that song. And I know that because I used to record multiple versions of songs back in the day. I'd be like, I don't like the way it sounds that way. I'm going to do it faster, or I'm going to strum it, finger pick it instead of strum it, just like all these different production recording things you can do. And now I've really kind of got it down to like, I know what this song is going to sound like as soon as I write it. Like, as soon as I come up with the riff, I pretty much know where I'm going to go. Because I'm like, I need a song that's about this pace and about this thing, and it sounds good. You know, like this is a good riff. I want to work off of this. So I basically kind of write a lot of riffs and play around on my guitar a lot. And the one that sticks, you know, I keep playing that and I make a voice memo and eventually I'll write my lyrics to it. Sometimes it all just comes out at once, you know. So there's lots of songs like Birmingham on this album I wrote in like 5 minutes and I knew exactly how I wanted it to sound. Wow. I could even hear the harmonies, like when I was singing the vocal, you know, for the first or second time through, I could hear the harmonies coming in, kind of knew, you know, where I wanted the melodies to go. Like all of those things, it just kind of all came to me at one time. But then there's other songs on this record, like Spiritual Genocide. I kind of just had the guitar riff, and it took me forever to kind of think of a lead guitar line. I had the whole thing tracked for like 6 months, and I got my friend Kel. I was like, "Can you write something for this? Because I can't figure it out." And he could never get around to it. He never sent me anything back. Finally, one day, I would just turn my guitar amp up, and it's like, "All right, I've got to figure this out." And I was like, "Oh, there it is. Let's do it." You know, and then I just tracked it. So, you know, it's just serving whatever the song needs. You know, the songs go through levels too. When you first write it, it's one thing. When you lay drums on it, it picks up a little more groove. You add bass, it picks up a little more groove. Then you're like, where am I at now? You reevaluate. You said, where's my space at? Like, where do I need to add space? Where I need to take away? You know, I just kind of start building things, and I tend to build and then subtract is kind of the way I do. I kind of run with every idea I have, and then I just start taking things out of it. Because I know that's the way to write. I kind of do my thing kind of based on the way people write novels, the way people write poetry and things like that, which is just you write a lot and then you edit a lot more. You know, to me, it's really all about editing when it comes to my own work. With Waterliars, it was a little different. The one thing I really did, I didn't write a single song for Waterliars. Justin wrote all of the songs. He was living with me for a good part of the time, so I was pretty in tune to what he was like each song kind of as he was working on them, and I would hear him like kind of have the riff, play it for forever and write a few lines, and he'd be like scrap it, and he'd come in with a whole new verse. And he's a really he's the kind of guy who spends a lot of time on one song, you know, like he really thinks about it a lot. I don't write in the same kind of way he does, but all that is to say that usually by the time I heard it, I kind of knew what he was going for, you know, and for me, it was all about kind of listening to the way he decided. I knew that once he decided he wanted to play the song that way, that's kind of the way it needed to sound. And so I really was just kind of always following him, you know, especially when we first started the band. You know, he would play, if he started hitting pedals, I'd hit loud, you know, and I really was just following him most of the time. And then even on Wyoming, it was like that a lot. I think Lennon's is the only song I kind of had a little bit of, was like, let's speed it up a little bit, kind of make it boppier, you know, because he was just kind of finger picking it, and he was like, I don't know what to do. And I was like, well, let's do this, you know. And I added the guitar, kind of the lead lick. I played all of that and just wrote that. I was like, it needs something there, you know. So that's kind of how I approach it. Is just like listen to the song, listen to what it has, and then just play along with it and build it up, and then edit it. Yeah.
How those are two very different approaches, and so I'm wondering, like, do you feel more comfortable with one or the other? This has been a theme that's been coming up in conversations lately with songwriters, is like the being a part of a band, and in this case, kind of following Justin's lead, and sort of just going wherever he's going with it, and then adding what you can add, versus like building the entire song yourself and then going through the editing process and playing everything, right? Like this has been coming up with songwriters a lot. And I don't think it's a COVID thing at all, even though certainly a lot of people were at home by themselves doing these things. Because I'm noticing that a lot of songwriters I've talked to lately got to a certain point in their careers where they were just like, you know what? I know what I want to do. I know what I want this sound to be like. I'm going to start doing my own thing, and it's going to be this thing. No disrespect to this thing, but I know what I want, and I can't do my thing here, so I'm going to go do it here. Is that kind of the case with you?
I think you just like summed up what breaks up so many bands. It's like, you know, I more figured out what my thing is just by playing in Waterlines. Like when I started playing Waterlines, I kind of thought I knew. I was like, oh, this is what I do. You know, like I can do my thing. So with Waterlines, I can just kind of lay back, follow Justin, you know, go along, make some cool jams. But through just all the experience of following him and then the studios and the shows, playing tons of shows, and then once I started making records after that again, I was like, oh, like I have more. This is it. Like this is what I was supposed to sound like. So, and then with him, I think it's kind of the same thing. Like he going into it, he was like in a band before and he wanted to kind of change his sound. He wanted to do something, but he didn't know how to do everything. And he knew I had made some records. And, you know, it was one of those things where I think both of us were really kind of, we had done shit before. We figured out a lot of shit together. And then we kind of moved off to other shit that we want to do. And when it comes to my own thing, I'm definitely like, I think most songwriters are, you're just like really particularly know what you want to do. You know what I mean? At a certain point, you get to a certain point where it's like, I know what my sound is, I know what kind of songs I want to write, and I know like what I want my record to sound like. So,
is that just a creative thing, or are there sort of like, I don't know, are there elements of control or elements of like ego involved there?
Definitely, that's definitely ego and control. I mean, I think it is. I think you'd be lying if you said there wasn't. I mean, that's one of the things that got tough with Waterlines. Actually, it got to the point where, you know, we all knew like what we were capable of, and it starts to build this tension. You know, when you, I don't know, you know, it's always like somebody's trying to get their stamp a little. You're trying to push your knob up a little higher than the next guy's knob. You're trying to, you know, it's just like I gotta stick out. I gotta stick out because everybody's so good. You get to the point where everybody's so good. You know, you got to lay off the ego and you got to sit back. You know, you got to know when to sit back. So yeah. I think when we first started that band, we were all kind of sitting back because we were scared. We were like, I don't know. Yeah, you go ahead. I'm right behind you, you know? So,
yeah.
And then you get to the point where you're comfortable, right? You get to the point where you're comfortable and you're like, I got this. Put me in the front. I got it, you know? Like, so yeah, it's a confidence thing. It's an ego thing. It's all of that stuff, you know? It's just, it really is a kind of a sad thing with songwriters in particularly. But I think that kind of comes with the territory. I mean, songwriters literally kind of sit around and think about themselves and write it and then sing about it in front of people and then make records about it and try to get people to buy them from them. I mean, it doesn't get much more egotistic.
Maybe podcasting. That might be the only thing that rivals it.
Hey, I'm thinking about getting into podcasting myself, you know? Like,
every songwriter's got a podcast now, man.
I mean, that's the nature of the thing. And to me, that's what's fun about it, though. I like, you know, and I always liked finding the record that was made by the dude in the band that you never paid attention to. You know, like I always liked that. And then and then still now, like I find these records and things that I hear and I'm like, oh, I didn't know that dude played in that band. That's awesome. You know, you know, I just think that shit's cool. So, and I think that's just part of being a musician and being a songwriter is like, you gotta always be kind of finding your thing and doing your thing, you know? So,
yeah, for sure. Is that, I didn't really think about it until you just mentioned that concept of like, of the tension between different musicians in a band. But is that, I wonder if that's part of what makes, I just think Roll On is just like this wonderful, wonderful record. I wonder if that's some of the magic that's in that record is tension. Cause that's kind of like the end for you guys, right? Is that pretty much it? I mean, it just came out recently, but.
Waterlines has this really wonderful open-ended. Yeah, we broke up, right? You know, we're all just like the type of dude that's like, you could pay us enough money, we would do anything. You know, I think that's the biggest part of it. We would never say never to anything if you could.
Oh man, I wish I could afford to front a record to pay for a record and a tour.
Talking about three dudes who will swallow their pride in a minute. You know? You could afford it. But I don't even know what I was saying. But
well,
yeah,
I was asking if there's some of the magic
of tension to roll on. There's a lot of tension. Even when I listen to that record, I hear my own tension. In that. But it's good. You know?
It's really good.
I think it's good. I think it's the most fun I had making a record. Roll on was the most fun.
That's interesting.
I think because, you know, we'd been making them down in Water Valley, which was great. I love that studio that we were working in there, but it kind of we did 2 records there, but we kind of done like a lot of 7 inches and singles. We were kind of always in and out of that studio. And when you do that for a few years, I don't know, it kind of starts to lose its magic, and you're just like, I don't know, you get stuck. And so taking Water Liars out of Mississippi and taking us to somewhere in Texas I'd never been to that studio, or even that part of outside of, this is not Denton, this is like in the country, you know, like outside of Denton out there. And us just like being stuck there, it was like, it was different, you know, and it was good. It was good for us to just like get away from everything and be in that tension and kind of like figure out what we wanted to do, you know, like where we wanted to go. And that record was made with, that is where we wanted to go if it would all, you know, hung on. So it just didn't work out.
Yeah, well, I'm glad we at least got that one, because it's just so wonderful, and I've enjoyed it so much. Man, it's kind of wild, like talking to you right now, just thinking about how much music that you've been a part of or made has been in my life, especially the last 2 or 3 years, just how much of your stuff I've consumed, and it's really fun to be able to get to talk to you about it. And again, this guy did such a great job in this interview with you. So you kind of answered this question with him, but I'm curious about the album cover is just like really startling and beautiful. And so I'd love to hear, you know, about the idea for it and how it came about.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of like a thing the album cover is supposed to depict kind of the moment that I thought of the album cover. And presence, if you will. Yeah. But also, you know, it's meant to have this kind of timelessness to it, but also with the cell phone, it dates it in a way too. You know, it makes it like that time and that's it. And then just it being last year, you know, one thing we went through while I was making the record too was moving houses. So I like completely had to pack up my studio, because I always record in whatever spare room I have in my house. And so my wife's father was dying of a terminal illness. She was away in DC for like a good part of the year. And in the middle of that, we bought a new house in Oxford, only about a couple miles away. But I had to pack up the entire house, pack up my entire studio in the middle of making the record. And just fucking really worried that like my acoustics weren't going to be good. It's this new place, it's going to be totally different. Is it even going to sound the same? Like not even knowing if I was going to be able to finish the record. And really that's what that plus not drinking is what the song Drink the Pain Away is. It's just me like in the middle of a house move and then it almost didn't happen for a minute after I had the whole house packed up. And it was just like kind of a disaster. But that was one of those things like in the middle of making that record that really created chaos, but then like pulled it all together at the end. And there was something about the image on the front of the record to me that represented the peace that came from it. Kind of the end of all of it. You know, it was just like us there, still together, still stuck in this house. I wanted the imagery of windows because there's a lot of like window imagery in the album. I'm always kind of fascinated with the idea that you can still see yourself reflected in a window, but still see out of it. I like that metaphor a lot. And that's also the same with water. I like metaphors, you know. I'm also like really into birds. I sneak birds into my songs now again because I'm kind of a nerdy birder guy in heart, and I also am really concerned about how birds can fly into windows. They see themselves, and like this is this whole metaphor like that I have in my head. And so to me, I hope it represents like all of that. To me, when I look at it, it does for me. It tells me this is what happened with this year, and it has all of those metaphors in it, and that's what I want to get through.
Wow. Dude, that's...
And also, you can see yourself in the phone, and when you're looking at, there's a lot of like reflection happening. So,
oh yeah, physical reflection and inner reflection, especially the being at home, and then the reflection, the inner reflection of making the record and sitting down with those thoughts, and all the while, what do you do like to stay that's a lot, right? Moving is stressful, right? Even if it's just down the street, it's very stressful. Your wife going through such a difficult time is stressful, of course, on her, but also incredibly stressful on you. You're newly sober at this time. The goddamn pandemic is happening, right? We're all freaking out already. And then we were like, at that point, we're still like, is this ever going to end? I mean, that's like pre-election.
President at that point too.
Huh?
Trump was still president at that point too.
Right, exactly. Like, that's a lot. So what were you doing I mean, how did you not, you say, I want to drink my pain away for the first time in 2 months today. How did you stay centered and not drink away your pain for the first time in 2 months? And like, what were you doing how were you feeling in that moment? And what were you doing to sort of maintain that balance and stay grounded?
Man, I ran about 4 miles a day. Sat on my porch, stared at the trees, wrote songs. And if I can write one song like "Drink the Pain Away," that song will carry me for a year or two. That's really what it was, man. And because I was about a few months into my sobriety at that point, I was doing a lot of online meetings. And so you're getting a lot of that day at a time talk. You're getting a lot of that stuff. I mean, that was really important, obviously. But I was really in that day at a time mindset, at that point. And not being able to kind of really look at the big picture was like what I needed. I needed like one day at a time. Like, today I get up, I write these songs, I play some guitar, I work on this record, I go for my run, I eat some food, I do my meeting, I come back, it's just like, that's what got me through it. Just chugging along every day.
Well, and that ties back into what you talked about with being in the present, I mean, that's the physical manifestation of, that's the actual practice of it, that day at a time. There's so many lessons there to learn for not only people in recovery, but I think all of us, lessons to be learned about that staying present. I've noticed lately, I was really good at it, I think, during lockdown, which was actually really good for me because it slowed me down. And I've talked about this on the show a lot, so I won't bore people again, but like, it was good for me. I needed the pause button. I hated what was happening in the world, but for me personally, it was healthy. But I've noticed that now, this is interesting. Like, now that we're getting back out, I'm having more trouble staying present. I'm having to be more aware of it. I need to get back into a regular meditation practice, which I've fallen out of. Because I'm noticing that now that I'm out and I'm consuming different images and I'm interacting with people in a different way, I don't have that one day at a time kind of approach to my life, and I'm not staying as present as I need to in order to be as well-rounded and happy as I can.
Yeah. Maybe it's because we can make plans now.
Yeah.
I got plans next week for a week. It creeps up on you, right? You're like, oh, well, I can do this in a month. A few months later, there's this thing happening. I might or I might not do that. You don't even realize you're like thinking about You know, you're thinking about, even if it's just a few months from now or what's going to happen at the end of the year, as soon as we can get out of our house and do something, we're going to start consuming ourselves. It was like, well, what can I do?
Mm-hmm.
I agree with you, man. Lockdown was good for me. I've locked myself down a few times over the decades, but just for my own sanity, I'm a pretty antisocial person, anyways. But I think we all kind of needed to chill. Like we need, a lot of the talk that I've heard about, when there's like, oh, this is so bad, it's so good, we can go out now, we can do all these things. All of it is always economy based. Every time, it's like, even with musicians, it's like, well, they can't play shows, they can't make money. And I agree with all that, and I love live music, but sometimes I want to say, you know what? Sometimes it's not worth it for me to, drive 6 hours and make $100 and hope I can get a free meal. All of this like economy bullshit. Maybe it is better for me to just sit home and write songs and chill out a little bit because I can stay in my present and be healthy. I think there's a lot of people out there like that, and maybe they got their shit together more than I do. But I feel you, man. I feel you on it for real.
Yeah, I think, and that's another thing I've been asking folks about, musicians about, is like envisioning what that can look like to maybe not drive that 6 hours and put to make that $100. Is there a path forward now that, like, I love the live streams. I was paying for them, like especially the good ones. Like I say good ones, like the ones that were well produced. Like Isbell did some shows that were just fucking phenomenal, and I was like, sure, I'll give you $15. I can sit at home and watch this, in the comfort of my home with my dogs, and not get out. And even if COVID wasn't a thing, like the idea that I could just not go and find parking and, fight the crowd and all that kind of stuff. And I'm down, so like what that path forward looks like for musicians who feel that same way is an interesting question. Cause like, yeah, fuck driving 6 hours to make $100, like,
I mean, that's the thing. I think it's my age too. It's like, if you're my age, you got to figure out where you are as a musician. If I got kids in school, it's not worth it for me. But if I was looking at my 20-year-old self, I'd be like, fuck it, dude, get out there, go. Yeah. Like, what else you got to live? It's different, So I definitely get it that I'm kind of the old guy in the room talking about this now too. That's a big part of it. And also, I really dig what you're saying about liking live. I liked live streams too. And I really thought about it a lot. And I think because I grew up in pretty rural Mississippi where there just weren't a lot of shows going on anyways. And I would always have to drive to Memphis, or, if there's a show in Tupelo, that was good because that was about an hour from me. But I had to, it was a thing for me to go to shows. Like I had to take off work or not take off work and save money and like do all this to go. And I loved it. But I think I didn't learn music that way when I was a kid because my family couldn't afford to do that. We wouldn't travel around to music festivals or anything. I learned music from watching TV. Like Conan O'Brien was like, seeing what band was going to be on Conan O'Brien at 10:30 was like.
That's how I got into Sunvolt. I got my Sunvolt poster back there. They were on Conan.
Yeah, it's like and to me, that's what the live streams kind of reminded me of again, was like, oh yeah, you used to could learn a lot about bands and the way people play and what types of stuff they do. I learned how to play music that way. We're just like watching people play on TV, like the way they held their guitars, I would watch the way they did their fingers. Drums, I learned drums by like watching dudes play on TV, and I would just like figure out how to do that. It's like,
wow.
I mean, I think there's still something to that. I think it has value. So I think it's too often devalued in society because it's on a screen, and it's free. But the problem is it's corporatized like everything else. That's the problem.
Yeah.
But that's also one of the big problems with live music. It's like there's no good luck finding a good DIY venue with punk shows happening anywhere.
Well, and I think that's what I loved about folks having virtual tip jars. I mean, still somebody's getting paid, yeah, Venmo's still making money or whatever, but but I just loved that. I loved how, and it's interesting. Instead of buying a ticket, I'm tipping somebody, and I don't have the numbers here in front of me, but I'm sure I tipped people more. It was such a personal thing. I'm sure I tipped people more. Instead of buying a ticket that's going to the venue and being split or whatever, I had to have been tipping more because, like, especially some of my friends would play live streams, and I'm like, man, hell yeah, I'll drop 10-15 bucks on your 30-minute set, whereas I might pay that to see a whole band play at a venue,
And you got to stand around a bunch of sweaty people and get beer spilled on you. And
yeah, exactly.
I think part of it too is like my hearing is starting to get weird in my old age because I worked in rock and roll for so long. Like I've been having to go to the doctor about it and stuff. I've already got significant hearing loss, and so that's like one of those things too, where I'm like, I can hear this at the decent volume that I need to hear it at, and it's cool,
Yeah, that scares me, man. Mine's definitely going too, and I haven't gone to the doctor because that's not what I do. I stick my head in the sand about shit like that. But I know it's happening.
My wife's been forcing me to go, dude. I would have never gone in a million years. But
oh my god,
you're going. I'm right.
She's like, you can't hear me. My partner, it drives her crazy. Like, she speaks kind of quietly anyway, kind of softly anyway. And I'll be like, I won't be able to hear a word she's saying, especially if there's other noise going on. Like if there's a record playing or something, I'm like, baby, I have no idea. Like you need to say it right in my ear for me to understand what you're saying. So it does kind of scare me, but I'm curious about the live thing. And so, you really didn't get a chance, I guess, to tour Sentimental Noises. And so now you got 2 records. Are you gonna
freaking out a little bit?
What?
I'm freaking out a little bit.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask. It's like, how's that feel? what are you gonna do?
20 songs I've never played live before. So
yeah,
I don't know, man. I've had a good deal of thought about it, and I don't know where I've gotten with it, honestly. My initial thought was like, there's so much happening right now, there's so much music coming out, and there's so many tours that people just like ready to get back out there. I was like, because of the level I'm at, where like I don't have a huge draw, and I'm still sort of fighting for my spot in the kind of lower middle echelon of shows, I was like, I'm just gonna chill out a minute because I can, and because I need the time, and I need to spend time with my kids, and I need to stay sober, so I'm just gonna like chill out for that. I don't need to get out there, but like I want to, and the main reason I need to is to sell records and make money, honestly. And that's something I really had to like come to terms with, is like really asking myself like, why, like why do you want to play live? Like, I think a lot of musicians went through that last year. It's like, well, like what do you get out of playing live? And why do you want to do it? Why do you want to tour? Why do you want to play a show at all? And for me, that's kind of how I am about everything. And I think a lot of musicians just come to a lot of different conclusions. Some people really just love playing live. And I definitely have before, but I know like even 10 years ago, it was starting to kind of like, I could take it or leave it a lot of times. I also really struggle with stage anxiety a lot, and I've never really talked about it, and a lot of people don't know, but a lot of that was tied with my drinking too. Like I couldn't play unless I was bombed. The last solo tour I tried to do, I went into it wanting to do it sober because it was just me in a car and the guitar, and I wanted to be good shows, and I wanted to be level-headed, and I wanted to remember everything. And I made it like 2 days because the anxiety in my guts, and I was physically ill. Like I just getting on stage, and I couldn't make it work. I remember being in Atlanta, and I got like 2 songs in, and I was like, "Does anybody have any whiskey? Like, give it to me now." And then I played great. It's like so like I'm really kind of scared to get back out there for that reason. And I'm just like I don't know why. I'm just like, you know, I would love to play in front of people, but like just in the right setting, and like in a good way. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I kind of want to play these songs, but I don't know. I don't even know how to do it. Like the band I've been playing with, the guy's been playing drums with me. He's about to move, and my bass player has already moved. I think that's another thing that happened last year was like a lot of bands and musicians had to figure shit out, you know. And so it's always easier for me to play with a band than play solo with my anxiety because I can just kind of let them have it. I come up and sing, I back up a little bit, let them have it. But it's a terrifying thing to be a man alone on a stage with a guitar, for me, anyways.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of folks, I can relate to that. I mean, I don't do it professionally, you know, I just play open mics every once in a while, and I've gotten better about it now, but it's a lot. I mean, you're putting your art out there by yourself. There's nowhere to hide. It's just you and your guitar if that's how you're doing it. And but I also wonder, like, so it sounds like it's crippling kind of anxiety for you. Is that something you've unpacked as like where that deep a level comes from? Like, has that come up in any, and if this is getting too personal, please tell me, but like, is that something you've unpacked so
I don't
that
think
when you,
I haven't completely unpacked it yet. It's something that's actually kind of new within the last few years,
okay.
that I realized was going on.
Mhm.
I'm still trying to figure it out, you know, like, yeah, I don't know yet, but
Right.
I mean, I had kind of, that last tour made me realize it was definitely a thing. And then I didn't realize if it was just the situational, you know, things that were going on around that tour and just other things that maybe were making me that way. You know what I mean? Like maybe it wasn't stage anxiety, which is anxiety. Uh,
Mhm.
and so I think through that tour and then what's happened recently kind of made me has realized like it's it's a version of social and stage anxiety, you know.
I wonder if being sober will actually help that. Like, you know what I mean? Because I think alcohol does, it masks the anxiety for a minute, but it adds to the anxiety on the other end.
Right.
Your
Yeah.
your blood pressure, specific, you know, physically it does. The guilt that you feel from what you may have said or not said or done the night before, the warped view of what happened the night before because of the alcohol, and the questions that come up in your head because of that. And you may end up going out there and being like, oh wait, I'm good, I'm sober, I'm not going to do anything that I'm going to regret tomorrow. You know.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, I like it's one of those things I think about it weekly. I'm just basically trying to figure out like, okay, when am I gonna try it? Because I definitely got to try it,
Yeah.
you know, at some point to like just get back out there. I think I'm part of it. I'm just like scared that I forgot how to do it. You know, I
Yeah.
mean, you said it, 2 albums with no shows behind it. I'm like a little bit like maybe I fucking lost it. You know,
Right. I think it's a natural feeling. I'm sure that's not true. You know, once you get out there, it'll be
I'm sure
fine.
it's not either, but I
Yeah.
think it's a real. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm just like one of the only musicians at my level who's still self-loathing, but I don't think that that's true.
Nope.
Um,
Not in my experience. And I talked to a lot of folks. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I've never been that confident live with a guitar,
Mm.
for some reason. I'm a lot more confident behind a drum kit
Mm.
or like playing bass or playing with someone. Like with Waterliars, I got to the point where I was like really confident, you know, like
Mhm.
I could do it in my sleep, my eyes closed, my drunk,
Mhm.
you know, high,
Mhm.
whatever. You know, I could do it. It wasn't as good, but I could do it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just one of those things. We'll see what happens. I there's something too like for these songs for both of these records. The types of places I want to play, I got to figure out where those are because I've thought about it just kind of going the straight house show tour, which I might do. I haven't really decided yet, but I like the idea of a stage. I like the idea of there being that little bit of barrier between you and the audience. I know some people want to break that down, and I always was one of those people who was pro breaking down the barriers of stages too in my punk rock community. But then when I got older, I kind of realized like I kind of like it because it just gives me that level of separation that I need to be comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. There's just something about, to me, the most terrifying thing for me has always been to like sit in a room and play for 4 people.
Mm-hmm.
It's like even more terrifying than being on a stage.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's that whole aspect of it too. So if I do get back out there, I really want to try to find rooms, they're not big rooms, but like rooms that I can play where people will actually listen.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that is also something I really have done a lot. I've played a lot of rooms where people weren't listening to me at all.
Mm-hmm.
And as a songwriter, you're like, well, yeah, I get $200, but who gives a shit? Like,
I got to see Patterson Hood last week. He played this wonderful venue. It's relatively new in the Orlando area called Tuffy's Music Box, and it's run by musicians, and they were so serious about like, please be quiet, please listen, And I think most people who are going to see Patterson with an acoustic guitar are there to listen to Patterson. And so the crowd was great. And then the next day I saw him in a venue that had to be moved into the amphitheater, right? So it was supposed to be outside and kind of intimate, and they moved it into the amphitheater, and it was still a great show, and the crowd was still really nice, but the difference was really was stark. The fact that Tuffy's is like, I even asked my buddy, I was like, because I don't know, this is an anxiety thing too, I think, but I love standing in the back. I love just enjoying a show from the back. I don't really have social anxiety, but there's something about crowds, especially now, us getting back out into the world. Like, I just feel comfortable back there. I don't want to be anybody's way, even though I'm not tall and I'm never anybody's way. I just feel like I'm in somebody's way all the time. And I just asked my buddy, I was like, who runs the place, like, do you mind if I stand in the back? And he's like, honestly, I'd rather you sit. And because standing people tend to talk, and not that I think you're going to talk, but somebody's going to come talk to you, and then that's going to change this whole experience. I was like, fair enough. So I sat, and it was fucking awesome. And everybody was quiet for the most part till they all got drunk, but everybody was quiet for the most part. And it was just such a beautiful night, in that room. But I think in this area, at least, we've got a few of those. There's one in Jacksonville, the Blue Jay listening room, that's that way, that they're very serious about it.
I don't know. I mean, and I'm saying all this, I completely agree with everything you're saying. Your buddy is smart too.
Yeah.
Like, hey, you got to sit down because it's not about you. It's somebody talking to you. Mm-hmm. A man standing. It's like another. It's like a man standing at a construction site. Like, hey, what's going on over here? Yeah, for real. That's great. I'm hoping I can get into some rooms and spaces like that. That would be. Mm-hmm. But then I feel like such a dick for talking. I'm coming to play you my songs. Not myself. I do in silence.
Yeah, but if you're at a venue that expects,
sit down, shut the fuck up. I think I have a problem asking for that too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because I've been the guy at shows that was like, who's this dude on stage? Like, what's going on? Like. Yeah.
But if you go to the place like that, I mean, it's a little bit of work, but finding those venues that are like, this is what we do here. We sit and we listen, right? Yeah. Shut up and listen. Right? That's what we do here. It's not like you're saying that, I mean, it's you going to seeking out those places that want that, so everybody there,
I think you just opened up like all of my answers that I needed for touring. Honestly, I have to say thank you, because there's so much I'm still like deconstructing so much from my punk rockness. I love so much like what I learned from DIY punk spaces and punk music and hardcore in general when I was young. Like, gave me so much, and I hardly listen to it now. I listen to it a good bit, but not as much as I used to. But there's so much about the ethos that it gave me so much when I needed it, coming out of a church setting. It's like hard for me to like push against that ethos when I need to, when it's healthy for me. When I need to say like, Andrew, grow up, like it's okay for you to say, I want to play a listening room, like,
right.
Being a dick,
Yeah. You're not a dick for like creating this beautiful piece of art and pouring yourself into it and then wanting people to listen to it. That's not you being a dick.
If I said that at a punk show, they'd be like, "Who's this dick?"
Yeah. Oh man, dude, this has been so much fun. I don't want to take too much more of your time. This has been such an honor. We always end on what you're getting down on, what you've been consuming art-wise, books, music, a film you saw, a painting that inspired you or that you made, for example, like anything lately art-wise that's got you fired up.
Man, I'm gonna get super weird on you. I've been reading this book called "Why Should the Devil Have All the Good Music," which is a sort of a biography of the guy who's considered kind of the king of Christian rock. His name is Larry Norman. He put out these really gnarly Christian rock records in the 70s. Super weird dude. I mean, like the first time I ever heard a Larry Norman song was in the 90s when like that Christian rap group DC Talk covered one of his songs for a video or something, and I heard it and I was like, what is this song? And it's like a super weird acoustic ballad about the rapture and being left behind, to kind of throw back to what we were talking about earlier. It's like a really weird song that makes you feel really weird, but it's gorgeous. It's a beautifully written song. I mean, it sounds like it could be written by John Lennon or Paul McCartney. So anyways, I've been kind of fascinated with this dude for a long time. And it's only like since Spotify have I even been able to kind of hear all of his records that are on there now. Because you just couldn't, it was hard to find them. I was always looking for them on vinyl and stuff. And anyways, this guy, Greg Thornberry, wrote a book basically kind of like about his whole life. So I would recommend looking up that book, look up Larry Norman, look up his records on Spotify and listen to this beautiful, weird Christian rock.
All right.
Get into the genius that this dude was.
That's wild.
He was a genius, but like nuts, like. But he was kind of like he helped form this thing called the Jesus movement, which were kind of these Jesus hippie people in the 70s, which kind of went on to form what people know as the Cornerstone Music Festival, which is the big Christian music festival that used to happen in Illinois. Okay, and that's where I got introduced to people like Pedro the Lion and Damien Jurado and stuff like that. So. It's sort of on the fringes of Christian rock. It's not, this dude like didn't even like, the evangelicals hated him. They just like they couldn't rein him in. He was too weird and like he actually wanted to be like Jesus. And they were like, what is it with this guy? How will he help us sell Christian records? And he was like, I don't care about that. Yeah. About the message.
Cool. All right, I'll check that out. I did not see that coming.
It's a weird recommendation, but like it's a cool rabbit hole to go into. Awesome.
Thank you, dude. A Meaningful Connection, just such a beautiful record. I mean, you put out 2 wonderful records in a row, and I'm so grateful for that music. I'm so grateful for you indulging my Water Liars questions. And I'm so grateful for all that you've shared today. This was so much fun. I'm really, really appreciate it.
Great little talk. I appreciate it too. Staring at the longest line, I came back to myself. Looking through the windshield of our busted out old van. There is no turning back and there's no wasting time. When you don't come from anywhere and you leave nothing behind.
Andrew Bryant, y'all. Thank you so much, Andrew. Thank all of you for listening. AndrewBryantMusic.com for all things Andrew. Get a physical copy of his excellent new record, A Meaningful Connection, while you're over there. Y'all, this was too much fun. I'm just so grateful for conversations like this. MarinadePodcast.com for all things The Marinade, including written pieces, photography, our online store, and so much more. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter. Give us a follow and a 5-star rating on your podcast app. These are all free ways to support the show. If you really like what we're doing, please consider joining our Patreon community, where for just a few bucks a month, you can gain access to Patreon exclusive content like our show Jason's Journey, where I talk about the moments that shape my creative life and provide a window into the process of making the Marinade. Sometimes we even get together for Patreon happy hours. Just a couple episodes ago, we had a live Marinade where our patrons got a chance to ask Seth Walker some questions and then just kind of hang out. We just kind of were talking and just having a good time. It's really fun. If you can swing it, come join us for, it's just little as a couple dollars a month. But if that's not in the cards, I totally understand, and I'm grateful for everybody just for listening. Thank you for listening and spreading the word about the Marinade. I appreciate every single one of you. All right, y'all, it's time for What I'm Getting Down On, the segment of the show where I talk about the art that is inspiring me at the moment. I want to take a minute to plug one of my favorite local record stores who are, their stuff is also available online, especially if you're into sort of like rare music books or rare records. If you're the kind of person who does a deep dive into like jazz or hip hop or something, the folks over at Binks Orlando are friends of mine. It's a coffee shop, a record store, a recording studio. It's such a cool spot. It's all in downtown Orlando. This is not a paid advertisement. It's just me talking about a really cool moment that happened a couple of days ago. There's nothing else like Binks in this area. My good friend Philly Kennedy is the assistant manager, and James Reed is the owner and manager. Philly was set to spin a vinyl DJ set on Friday night. I'm recording this on a Sunday. And then our good friend of the show and wonderful songwriter Jordan Foley was playing later that night at a different venue. So I was like, I'll go see Philly, and then I'll shoot over and check out Jordan's set for a little while, hopefully in bed at a decent hour. So I went to Binks first and grabbed a cup of coffee. Since a set that begins at 8 on a Friday night is kind of late for my old ass. And while waiting for Philly's set to begin, I flipped through the bargain bin at Binks. I found a copy of Chris Christopherson's The Silver-Tongued Devil and I, which includes one of my favorite songs ever. This record came out in 1971. It includes Lovin' Her Was Easier Than Anything I'll Ever Do Again, which came into my life through Waylon Jennings. And it's just one of the most, it's always lays me flat. It's such a beautiful song. I love it so much. And everything that Christopherson has done is incredible. But that particular record really stands out to me. I also scooped up Garrett Klon's self-titled solo record from 2016. Garrett's best known for his work with the band Texas Is the Reason, but my introduction to his music was through Have Gun Will Travel. He's kind of an honorary member of the band. He often opens their shows and then plays with them. And this was a really exciting find for me. Have Gun has meant so much to the Marinade. Frontman Matt Burke has appeared on the show twice. They're friends of ours. They've been really good in just supporting the show and supporting this thing that we're doing and encouraging it. There are a few feelings like flipping through records and finding something exciting and unexpected and that you emotionally connect to. This was such a moment. Y'all, buy physical copies of music that you love when possible. It helps the artist. It's better for the environment. Don't believe me? Look it up. If you buy from local stores, it helps your local economy. There are so many benefits. Plus, it's just fucking fun. I love y'all. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you, Andrew. I appreciate you so much. Everybody go out and listen to his record. Buy a physical copy. Until next time, go out and create something. Cheers, y'all.